Maybe our Let me start over. Welcome, folks who may be just trickling in. This is our August YASS, or Youth and Young Adult Support Space. So hopefully you're in the right virtual location. And again, we're glad that you're here. We're going to give it just like 2 minutes for more folks to trickle in, and then I imagine more folks will continue rolling in as we get started. But y'all who have experience in this space know that this hour flies by. So again, we'll give it an extra 2 minutes for folks to trickle in. And thank you, Raphael. I see you in the chat. Absolutely. As folks are trickling in, if you'd like to get acquainted a little bit, break some ice in the chat, we welcome you to share your organization, your role, where you're located, be a fun fact about you, how you're feeling today, anything that you want to share in the chat, just as we get settled into this space and give it just one more minute for folks to trickle in. Um, I see, Raphael. No worries at all. Appreciate you joining us as you're able to. And this session is being recorded, so you can definitely catch up on what you missed after today. We got more folks trickling in. Welcome, y'all. More folks trickling in. Amazing. And I imagine that'll be the case as we get started. But uh, as I shared before, for folks familiar with this space, this hour tends to fly by pretty fast. So I do want to get us started. And as folks continue to trickle in, we'll absolutely let them in. So that being said, hello again and welcome. This is our August Youth and Young Adult Support Space, or our YASS. As always, we're so grateful that you were able to join us today. I imagine that folks are busy. I know it's the middle of the week, so hoping that all things are going well for folks. And again, grateful that you're here today. So we do, as always, need to provide you with the following disclaimer. So welcome to just some intro bits for today. So this presentation was prepared by NTAC under a cooperative agreement from SAMHSA. And while this event is supported by SAMHSA, the contents are those of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official views of SAMHSA, HHS, or the U.S. government. And thank you to folks who are introducing themselves in the chat. For folks who are just joining us, please feel free to introduce yourself, sharing your role, the organization that you're a part of, and anything else that you'd like to share in this space to kind of break some ice in the chat a little bit today. But moving on to session security. So been pretty smooth sailing up until this point, so we hope that continues on. And while we anticipate that there won't be any security issues that happen today, in the event that any may occur, this session will immediately end and you will be notified by email on how to join a new session. So thank you again for attending one of our sessions today. Listed here, we got to give creds where they're due, right? These are all of our incredible national partners that have come together to utilize their expertise and their subject matter knowledge to help inform the field by creating products, resources, and sessions like this one to enhance the mental health and behavioral health fields. So just a little bit about our vision and mission, right? As a center, our vision is that all children, youth, and families living with and impacted by mental health experiences will have access to the resources and opportunities that they need to thrive in a comprehensive and equitable system of care. We serve a wide cross-sector audience, including everyone from state leaders to providers to the school workforce, infant and early childhood providers, community-based providers, peer supervisors, family partners, youth peer supports, and much more. And our services range from individual consultation to more in-depth sessions like the one we're offering today, to peer learning exchanges and other tools, resources, opportunities to support you. Our aim is really to create those outlets for communication, collaboration, and resource sharing amongst all of us. So please also make sure to check out all of our resources and archived presentations on our website, or go to the Contact Us link there to request consultation or training. Just a little bit more in my intro bits, y'all. So just some FAQs. We want to address some frequently asked questions that come up during our sessions to let you know just some answers to those before we get started. So in the follow-up email for today's session, you will receive a certificate of completion, a link to the recording of this session, and a copy of the slide deck presentation that is being shown if you haven't received one already. So stay tuned for that. And again, welcome again to our YYASS session. This is a virtual learning space for those working in and leading youth-centered programs and organizations to really come together and learn together. This is an awesome space that is perfect for leaders of Youth MOVE chapters. So welcome representation from our chapter network if you're here with us today, as well as other youth-run programs that engage youth with lived mental health experience in change-making efforts. So if you've been with us in these YYASS sessions, welcome back. If this is a new space to you, welcome for the first time. And just reintroducing myself as your YYASS host and moderator. My name is Shane McDonald. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs, and I am a youth program coordinator with Youth MOVE National. I will also share always that I'm a person of many lived and living experiences, and I'm just so grateful to be doing the work that I am and to be sharing this space with all of you. So without further ado, I want to introduce our presenters. I'm hoping that both folks are here. But hopefully we are joined by Youth MOVE Suncoast chapter leads, Xina Liu and Jordan Stonecypher, who will discuss their Elevating Youth Voices initiative, which really focuses on creating collaborative community spaces for youth to lead efforts in creating meaningful change in their communities while encouraging community partners to work alongside them throughout the process. They'll also share some considerations for replicating this effort in your communities if you're interested in exploring further. So thank you all so much for joining us today. And I see you both here. Thank you so much for joining us. I am passing the virtual mic to y'all if you are ready to get us started.
Cool. Thank you, Shane. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Yes, like introduced, my name is Jordan Stonecypher. A little bit of background on me. I am one of the co-founders of the Lean on Me project, which is a school-based program in Sarasota, Florida. I also oversee our Youth MOVE Suncoast chapter, that is the Youth MOVE chapter in Sarasota. And I'll pass it to Xina so Xina can introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Zina. It's such a pleasure to be here with everyone today. I currently serve as the president of Youth MOVE Suncoast, and I first became involved with Youth MOVE Suncoast mainly because of the Photo Voice project, which is really related to the work group that we'll be presenting to you guys today. I also serve on the board of directors for Youth MOVE National.
All right, thank you. All right, we can go to the next one. Yeah, sweet. All right, Elevating Youth Voices. Xina, I will let you start us off, and we are so excited to present to y'all.
Yes, so today we're going to be talking about the Elevating Youth Voices work group. It is a group that we did in our chapter in our Youth MOVE Suncoast that we found to be very successful. So we're here today to share with you guys how we were able to do it, how the model works, and how you can adopt it or replicate it within your own communities.
All right, so what we'll be going over today, y'all, we'll give you some background on how Elevating Youth Voices came to be. Then we'll get into the purpose and goals of Elevating Youth Voices from a Youth MOVE Suncoast perspective and community perspective. We'll also go over the process, kind of like a month by month of how we create Elevating Youth Voices to be as well, and kind of where we are currently with it. We'll also go over our results of, what did Elevating Youth Voices produce, not just a plan that Youth MOVE Suncoast and our Sarasota community is utilizing, but also the results of like, what did it look like when youth and adults just engaged in this, and how did those results look? After that, we'll talk a little bit more about what we learned throughout this process, so y'all can take some tips and tricks with you if you would like to also potentially maybe modify or replicate this model for y'all's community when working with youth and adults and really elevating their youth and young adult voices. And of course, at the end, we'll have an opportunity for Q&As if anyone's curious about anything, we can kind of fill in any gaps.
Yeah, so before we get started, we do want to recognize some of these amazing people who've contributed so much to our work group and who are the main reason that we were able to successfully carry it out in our communities. So for the coordinators, Jordan, me, Zena, and also Nathan Scott, who I believe is also in this meeting today. So shout out to him. Also team members, Vanessa, Izzy, Cecile, Mia, and Sydney. So thank you to everyone who helped make this project come to life and help make this an amazing experience for all of us.
All right, so some background on elevating youth voices. So it's been a long process, y'all, of how this has kind of come to be, and it's been really beautifully organic in how our community has come together for this. So it all kind of started back in spring of 2023 when Youth MOVE Suncoast partnered with Dr. McGlary at the USF. So USF is our college, a local college in Sarasota, Florida, and it's in Tampa as well. Partnered with the USF lab to essentially execute what was our originally at first our photo voice project. And that's where we essentially conducted 4 focus groups. But the cool thing about these focus groups and using photo voice as a methodology is that these instead of it just being verbal focus groups, we use photos to represent our answers. So you not are only generating information, but you're generating content to really capture what we're looking to capture within photo voice, which for us at Youth MOVE Suncoast back in 2023 was really to better understand the supports and barriers to youth mental health, especially post-pandemic. So we were really looking to understand at Youth MOVE Suncoast how we can improve how we can increase the supports in youth mental health in the community, and also how to really break down those barriers or identify those barriers in youth mental health. From there, once we collected all this amazing data and we did all these great presentations, we essentially were kind of left with like, okay, well, what do we do with this data? So we're kind of twiddling our thumbs for a little bit, trying to find creative ways to engage this in our strategic plan for Youth MOVE Suncoast. Meanwhile, Nathan Scott here today, Sarasota's Child and Family Wellbeing Systems Coordinator. He is thebomb.com. We love Nathan. He was really, really bringing in some awesome inspiration from the Surgeon General's advisory report on the healing effects of social connection community, which by the way, there's also a really awesome podcast where the Surgeon General captures all this information too. Highly recommend listening. But essentially taking this information from the Surgeon General and wanting to find a way to address these increasingly problematic and escalating behaviors that youth essentially then leading them down to arrests, mental health crises, and placement in out-of-home care. So with these pieces of information of the Photo Voice Initiative and kind of knowing what the Surgeon General and Nathan Scott kind of like bringing this information together, this led Youth MOVE Suncoast, our group, to kind of get creative and curious about like, if we know that there are so many youth advisory boards and leadership committees, and we also know because of the Photo Voice Project, all these youth and adults have such great perspectives, what would it look like to combine all of these, amazing individuals, these youth and young adults, to really start to see the trajectory of how to address these issues that we're coming across? So thus birthed Elevating Youth Voices. It created Elevating Youth Voices then essentially was the opportunity for us to, across organizations and systems, to partner, organize, and curate supportive relationships with one another to devise a plan on how to approach these problems from their perspective. And that's a big emphasis here, is from a youth-run, youth-led perspective. And that is what created Elevating Youth Voices that we're presenting on today. And I'll pass it to Zena talking about our purpose and goals. Oh, we can go to next slide too. Thanks.
Yeah, so the purpose of Elevating Youth Voices is basically to give youth an opportunity to create change that they want to see. So for a lot of like existing nonprofits, especially like existing goals, purposes, they want to utilize these youth voices and they want to encourage youth to make a change. However, a lot of times while youth do have the voices and they have these opinions that they want to incorporate in their communities, a lot of times they don't have the resources or the necessary support or networking or connections in the communities that they need in order to actually implement these changes. So that's why, as Elevating Youth Voices, we wanted to connect along with Nathan Scott, who has a lot of like connections locally. We want to unite these different organizations that are youth serving, and we want to utilize the connections that they have so that the youth who are involved in our work group, so that like their opinions and their perspectives that they see can actually be implemented into the communities through strategic planning to actually make differences. So for example, Jordan will go over kind of like our calendar or our process of what we did month by month. But towards the initial starting phase of the actual work group, we met with a lot of local nonprofits and youth serving organizations to explain to them our purpose, our goals, and we encouraged them to nominate youth to serve in our work group and to actually give the support for these youth so that once we have the strategic planning done, they'll be able to actually support youth through these perspectives that they've identified through the communities. So mainly we wanted these community partners to support youth in what they're doing instead of only listening to the youth opinions, but not actually making a difference. And you can go on to the next slide.
Yeah, and exactly what Dina was illuminating too. So we had kind of like a month by month process that kind of really broke down how do we go from start of what is this? This is just an idea that we're pitching to the community to like, how are we actually applying this, making this happen in the community? So in January, that's kind of where it all kind of started to come together. Where we started to pitch this project to the community partners. That again, Nathan is a very like well-connected person in the community for youth and young adult programming. And in addition to like our connections and resources at Youth MOVE Suncoast, which is our program is attached onto NAMI Sarasota Manatee. So using all those relationships and connections, we essentially did a presentation pitching our Elevating Youth Voices work group idea and asking organizations to invite us and their youth to the table to say, hey, would y'all like to be a part of this work group? And like, what ideas do y'all have? So once we met with them in January to essentially pitch this idea, that's when in February we gathered this amazing group of youth and young adults to really start this work group. So in February, it's just really breaking it down of like what is Elevating Youth Voices, the purpose, the time commitment, what to expect, really kind of breaking down of like, hey, this is what the intention of this is. Are you in? Once we presented to those youth and young adults and they were like, yep, I am in, sign me up. This is freaking awesome. That's in March where we started to identify the community improvements for you. So that's when our work group really started working. So our first step was, again, focusing just on identifying the improvements we want to see in the community based off of, again, the photo voice data, the Surgeon General's report, other aspects of youth and young adult engagement in the community and what they're noticing, and really started to identify our focus areas for our Elevating Youth Voices plan. From there, it's not just enough to identify what are the improvements, but we need steps on how to improve them then. So that's where we start identifying the steps and community partners that can be involved in supporting this, because it's not all just about what youth and young adults can do, but it's also the community partners that can support them in doing that. So that in April is really where we started kind of breaking down that plan into a strategic plan. In May, that's when we essentially put our strategic plan all together and we did a final project pitch to the community partners to say, hey, community partners, this is what our youth and adults came up with. This is a plan we'd like to execute. Who's with us? And that is when we got some buy-in from the community partners of how we can kind of continue to engage with them going forward, what pieces of our plan they want to engage with, which will go in our plan in future slides. And then that led us to June. So in June, we had our Youth Move election because the not photo voice, that's the other one. Elevating Youth Voices was only from January to May that we were conducting this work group, but we wanted the opportunity for this work group and the youth and adults to continue their engagement as much as they wanted to. And that is the opportunity for them to join our Youth Move Suncoast board or our Youth Move Suncoast committees. And that is where they had the opportunity once they were elected into their roles or they join our committees where they can really start to see our strategic plan, our Elevating Youth Voices plan happen throughout the 24 to 25 Youth Move Suncoast year. Once we had our election, July is when we really started implementing these plans of, what does it mean to actually go about these steps? And a few of the steps that we've taken so far that we didn't get to list here, but I'm just going to verbally say out loud. One of them is we're focusing on collaborating with different organizations around the community on our 3 focus areas that Zena will be going over next of what kind of Elevating Youth Voices yielded in our plan. Also, the Department of Health in Sarasota has included the Elevating Youth Voices priority in the Community Health Improvement Plan for the 2025 to 2030 year plan. So that is awesome. So we have some big community engagement there. And in addition to that, the Central Florida Behavioral Health Network, which is the managing entity of $24 million of public funded mental health and substance use services over 10 county areas, has the Elevating Youth Voices on the agenda to present at the regional council meeting, which covers over 3 counties in September. So that's just a few little like teasers as to like what we're doing with Elevating Youth Voices and really pushing this out to the community and really focusing on the steps that we want to execute. But now I'll let Zena present what did Elevating Youth Voices actually yield? Like what is our actual plan that youth and young adults identified within our community as focus areas for us for this year?
Yeah, so our youth from the work group identified 3 main visions. So first for mental health, in Sarasota in our county, our mental health education at school, they used to entail only 1 hour of like mental health videos that are not really engaging, especially for like high school students who is the target audience for these mental health education videos that are administered by the school. So our youth who were involved in the work group, they identified this and they came up with a strategic plan to encourage youth and community partners to learn about mental health and to not only just reaching out to supportive adults, but also knowing how to apply these mental health knowledge that they're learning in real life. So like how do you use what you learned in like a real mental health situation, or how to support your peers, how to encourage others to be involved in mental health advocacy. So that was the first vision. And then for the second vision, our youth realized that we live in a very fast-paced society, and a lot of times there's like a lot of pressure either at school or in work areas where you are very like encouraged to do a lot of things at once, and a lot of times this is not very supportive or not very beneficial for a lot of the youth or young adults. So they've identified that youth should engage in a work or a school culture that prioritizes basic human well-being, basic needs, and also just personal like being at peace with yourself, and to prioritize these relationships and basic needs at a pace that is natural to the human brain or to life. And then for the third vision is engagement. So we realized that post-pandemic, after COVID-19, there has been a trend of low youth engagement. This was something that was identified through the Photo Voice project as well, where youth feel kind of isolated from school or from their teachers. They feel like they're not being understood by older adults, and there's just like not a lot of opportunities, or they don't realize how they can engage with their communities, or they don't realize how supportive their communities can be because they've never really taken the effort or time to actually engage with their communities. So our youth have identified that they want to support these other youth or young adults in the community to have this engagement, to be willing to engage. So we want them to commit to different organizations, different missions, whether it's like, for example, volunteering, joining like Youth MOVE, for example. That is so we want youth in our communities to engage in more of these supportive activities and these supportive events that are happening. So for each vision, we created a strategic plan for each vision. And through that planning, we've identified, for example, the current reality or currently what is happening in our community, the actual issues that we're facing that have led us to identify these visions. Also, how can we achieve these visions? What are some of the community partners that can actually step in and help, or who has the necessary connections to help address this issue? How do we measure success? So we had both qualitative and quantitative measures of success. For example, looking at youth around your school, for example, how many do you see who are not very engaged to their even like classroom community or to their school community, and how can we address this? What are some obstacles and how to overcome them? For example, there's like still stigma around mental health, and some youth, they're not willing to talk about it, or they're not willing to engage because they have like a very heavy class schedule, for example. So that would be like a potential obstacle. and also just other relevant considerations. So all three of these visions were incorporated, especially in our Youth Move Suncoast plan. So for example, as we go forward, and as Jordan mentioned, as we continue planning different events that we'll do as Youth Move Suncoast, we are accounting for all three of these visions. So for like any event that we're planning right now, we have like an event planning document, and when writing out the event, we'll select which vision this event will actually be targeting towards, or would this event be actually trying to address. For example, we have like youth meetup events, that where we just hang out with youth in the community, we hang out with them and then like play games or do like vision planning with them at NAMI. And this could be a way to get youth to feel more engaged to the communities and to encourage them to come to future Youth Move Suncoast Youth Move Suncoast meetings and continue to be more engaged and more involved with the community.
All right. So something again, like we kind of noted earlier, not just the result of what did Elevating Youth Voices and this work group yield as a plan, what did it yield for the people that participate in it? So it's kind of hard to see, but I'll read out the pre and post. I love my good data and all that stuff. So we always collect pre and post data with our events, our work group, any sort of projects that we're doing. So we collected some pre and post data to better understand essentially the effects that Elevating Youth Voice had on the youth and adults that were part of this work group. So in the two pie charts that are, it might be hard to read there, but essentially what we saw is in that youth and young adults that engaged in Elevating Youth Voices work group felt had an increase in feeling that they felt more connected to their community and that they felt more like a leader in their community as well. And to increase the connection and the autonomy that youth and young adults leader like voices matter is such a place of empowerment when that's exactly what Youth Move Suncoast and Youth Move is all about, is really putting youth and adults in those leadership positions, and really creating the opportunity for them to feel like, community partners in this, and really empowering them. We always ask, not just, qualitative, but quantitative wise, um, we wanted to know like, so what did they get out of this opportunity? Not just the numbers, but their actual experience. And so when we asked them what they got out of this experience, they said that they were able to identify the roots and issues in their community with the others that kind of helped to develop solutions, that they were able to learn from and get to know people who shared similar interests, and that they were able to essentially make a difference in the goals in youth in the community, and really building community as an overall. And I thought this one quote from one of our participants really summed it up really well, of how a lot of the youth and adult felt after engaging in the Elevating Youth Voices work group, but that they were really happy with what they got out of this experience and what they got to take away, and that they really appreciate all the effort that contributed to make this community possible. I thought that was just a really sweet note, that it shows that it's not always just about like the plans that we make, but also the impact we make with those that are creating the plans. All right, so we'll go on to the next slide.
Okay, so what have we learned? So the first thing we've learned is that it's hard as students or even as like a smaller local organization, which is Youth Move Suncoast, to connect and to basically unite many, many youth serving organizations locally. So by us having the support of Nathan Scott was so extremely impactful for us because we were able to connect and basically get the attention of so many local organizations, and to have them sit down and listen to us as we introduce this work group to them. But also some youth serving organizations locally, before we started the actual work group meetings, they even invited us to their youth meetings to talk about this work group and to garner more youth interest. So I think that was really important for us. So like by having someone who would be there to gather the attention of local youth serving organizations was crucial for us. The second thing is to make sure that the youth who are involved know the time and work commitment and also agree to this commitment. So a lot of times, like youth or young adults, they have a lot of things going on there in their lives. So, but for our work group, so we didn't meet. Our meetings were not actually very long. Most of the work actually occurred outside of the work group. We divided our youth and young adults into smaller teams to work on different visions. So it took quite some time to work out the strategic planning and to actually put thoughts into it. How to actually address this often takes up a while. So make sure who's involved would know that they're actually committing to this and there is like an end goal to be reached within like a reasonable amount of time. And then third, so stipends for involvement can always help, but we do understand that a lot of times youth serving organizations, you might not have like enough funding for these. So just make sure that whoever's involved is motivated and is driven to actually addressing different issues in their communities. And then the next thing is to have your steps on what you plan on doing after you get the strategic planning. So make sure that you keep that in mind and you know what you're doing or where you're taking these strategic plannings because as we said, obviously we want these visions that the youth spent so long working on to not just be pushed away or to not just fade out. In fact, we want them to be incorporated into our communities, whether that's like in the form of event planning, incorporated into things like, say, the community health assessment plans. For us, we have, as we said, we've incorporated it into our strategic planning for Youth MOVE Suncoast. So as we plan future events, we're taking all of this into consideration and we're actively addressing these visions or these issues that the youth participants have identified. And then lastly, to have strong community partnership and have youth constantly involved. So obviously we want this to be coming from youth perspectives because this is we want to elevate, we want to uplift the voices of youth. So we don't want this to be something that, you know, youth are just lightly involved in or it's mostly adults who are or it's mostly older adults who are actually addressing this. We want the youth perspective into these community planning strategic plans. So how can you use the model that we've proposed? So you could brainstorm ways to improve systems, for example, like different things that are specific to your community. For us, we've identified, for example, like the mental health education system in Sarasota County wasn't great for youth. So maybe start thinking of ways that systems in your community can be improved and create strategic plans with youth and get youth actually involved in planning. So as I said, not just like youth being there at events or youth volunteering at events, but also youth having the vision and using that vision to help plan for events. Um, and also just hear out youth. For our meetings for Elevating Youth Voices, it's mostly just all youth talking and discussing different ideas that they have. And we're taking notes. We're actively listening to the voices and opinions that every youth participant has. So make sure you listen to your youth and to empower them, to encourage them to use their voices and to make a change. And I think that is all. So we'll take any questions. Thank you guys for listening to us.
And thank you both so much for joining us. And as I shared in the chat, definitely this is a really awesome opportunity to ask these two amazing folks some questions if you have them. As I shared, I imagine that all of us in this space are seeking to, if not actively, engaging youth as partners in greater systems change, or are those young people yourselves in some way? So please do, if folks want to raise their hand on Zoom, or throw any questions that you have in the chat, as well as anything that you'd like to share in terms of reflections. Today I learned anything you'd like to share regarding this topic and with these two amazing folks. So giving y'all some space to percolate. And then again, we welcome folks who want to enter the space and share verbally or to drop some thoughts in the chat. And as folks are percolating, I will also share. I just so appreciate so much of what y'all shared. Rings true to a lot of what like I'm in spaces kind of considering, thinking about, sharing about. And in regards to this meaningful youth engagement and partnership as an effort. I know that a part of that is this ongoing challenge of tokenism, right? These kind of surface level opportunities where folks maybe get an opportunity to share a little bit of their perspectives and insight, but it only goes so far and they're not looped in from start to finish. And I think that your approach, your framework of exploring meaningful partnerships in this way is absolutely in service of challenging that. And again, like I imagine that I'm not alone in that effort as well. So um, I appreciate everything that y'all shared and hope that it was helpful for other folks in this space too. And I don't see any questions in the chat, but I am looking in our space for any raised hands. And I did drop the link to your chapter's webpage. I don't know if y'all have like specific contact information that would be best for folks to be able to reach out to you if they'd like to continue the conversation with you directly outside of what's on that website. But if there's anything you want to share, you can absolutely drop those things in the chat.
Yeah, I'll drop my email in the chat if anyone wants to reach out. And if anyone's ever interested in maybe like duplicating this model or like having some conversations of, just some like how I could like do this, but modify it a little bit this, brainstorming, we'd love to collaborate. We're all about, how we can help continue to push out this message again of like, reducing and essentially eliminating like the tokenism of yeah, let's just like bring on this youth. Like no, let's actually bring on this youth and young adult so we can actually listen and hear, because I think so much of the time we have a lot of like adults in the seat of making decisions, but at that point sometimes they're so disconnected to youth and young adults that you don't really exactly understand how to engage them. And I think even with best efforts in trying to engage them. So if anyone is ever interested in learning more, I'll drop my email into the chat, and you're more than welcome to reach out to us at Youth MOVE Suncoast that way, and I'll connect y'all with the team and everything.
Thank you so much, Jordan. And I do see I'm getting a couple messages directly to me in the chat. So I'll throw this in the chat just generally too so that other folks can see it, just the question itself. So one question for y'all is how do you get the youth engaged in local government and policy efforts? Kind of a broad question, but any thoughts that y'all have on that?
Yeah, I can take that at first, and then Zena, if you have any additional thoughts, feel free. But yeah, so I think from a local government and policy perspective, so I think it's important to acknowledge like Youth Move Suncoast and NAMI Sarasota Manatee is not part of any, it's not like a local government organizational thing. We may collaborate with local government organizations. So for example, we have a really great relationship. Again, we keep saying his name and I'm going to like shout from the rooftops. Nathan Scott is our dude. And so I think really, having a relationship somewhere in the local government is the way to get them engaged. So for us, again, Nathan Scott is such an amazing community connector, not just with us, but he's very well known all throughout Sarasota Manatee to create relationships for Sarasota County and family and children's health. So I think really having a champion in the local government, so finding your person that can be that relationship for you to engage with, to brainstorm ideas, to bring people together, has yielded the best results for us personally. Zena, I wonder if you have any like additional thoughts of that, or even Nathan too. I know you're here as well. Maybe you have some ideas, but Zena, feel free to add if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, mostly with what Jordan said, the most that we've done related to local government or policy efforts was engaging with Nathan Scott and, speaking at like Department of Health, or to incorporating our final strategic planning into the community health improvement plan. But I guess another side thing that has worked pretty well for us was back in November of last year, we actually did like a petitioning at local at a local farmers market. And it was just like general petition around increasing youth engagement and youth peer support in the community. We found that although it wasn't like a very official thing, it was pretty effective in terms of getting attention on this issue, and people were actually willing to learn about it in our community. So that was pretty surprising for us. And I'd say it was one of the more engaging events that we've done. So that could also be another way to get youth more involved or engaged in policy efforts.
I love that so much. I do have one more question that was direct message to me, and then I know that we have a few in the chat as well. So, um, let me see. So I have, as a youth advisor for the state of Missouri, there is a lot of discussion in our region to talk more about youth involvement. It would be great to talk about how to encourage individuals to get involved in these types of opportunities for youth. That might be a little bit more of like a sentiment shared rather than a question. But if you did have anything uh, around that further. And I just appreciate too that you're sharing like having these conversations in spaces with those implementing these efforts and getting that youth engagement as well as in communities with folks who might be wanting to get involved in that as well. So conversations in all areas where all parties involved are is awesome.
Yeah, and I'll even add to that too. The relationship goes both ways. So Nathan reached out to us, but we build a relationship with Nathan and the government and everything. So, I think it's also a collective effort of organizations really reaching out, and also the government also really reaching out as well to coincide and really kind of build up the communication and the strategicness in how we combine forces to, and not just be an organizational effort or a local government or government effort. That really, and when we combine forces and we're able to utilize our different skill set and our different maybe areas of reach, that's where I find like the most helpful and productive. Because I think at one point in Sarasota County, what we found is like organizations would do this, and even organizations alone would individually focus on their own organization. There wasn't a lot of community connection and collaboration. And now we're really focusing in Sarasota County to like, how do we combine these efforts and make a more cohesive system and structure and supporting each other in what we do best. And I have found that to yield a lot of helpful results in supporting youth and young adult engagement in that way. So I hope that maybe adds to any of the sentiment or adds any additional ideas or information for y'all to kind of take and run with that and everything.
And I see a question in the chat, someone who said, how did you help organizations be receptive to not just listening, but acting on the youth guidance? So I think for us, for the organizations that we were able to collaborate with throughout the Elevating Youth Voices work group, our goal was to uplift youth voices and to encourage them to advocate in these areas that really aligned with the general goal or general purpose of these different organizations that were supporting us. So I think that was the main thing, because our main goal wasn't because I know sometimes there's like a sense of like competition between nonprofit organizations locally or smaller nonprofits. But for us, since our goal just really aligned with theirs, and we really just wanted to uplift youth, not in our own community, not in our own organizations, but in their organizations. And we wanted to hear the voices and opinions of youth in their organizations and to basically address things that would make our entire community better. So ultimately, it would affect all of us. So I think that was one of the reasons that the organizations were actually contributing, and that after showing them our strategic plan, they realized that we actually like have this thing thought out. We have actions in mind to take. And I think that was the main reason that they were able to act on these opinions that their youth came up with.
Yeah, and some additional thoughts to Zena's thoughts as well, and to answer to the question too is so I think it's a little bit of a two-parter from my perspective. One of them being I unfortunately I think it's taken at least I believe Sarasota County to see a lot of like mental health crises and unfortunately like completion of suicide to really start to be for adults to realize they don't know what's going on with youth. And they can, wonder and do the research all day long, but until you utilize that peer support model of like, let's go down to the ground and just ask and understand, that a lot of the time you'll be throwing, what is the term, you're throwing something on the wall and seeing what sticks. That method isn't working anymore. And it's wasting time and it's wasting lives. And we've kind of gotten to the point, I think, in Sarasota County as a youth advocate, um, to really focus in on, it's saying it's okay that if adults don't understand, but we have perspectives and we have information and we have lived experience to say, but we do, and we have ideas for y'all, and that if you guys can just support us in that and help us to make that happen, because they have, the power, the money, and the this and the that, and we have the voice to, can you elevate our voice, essentially, use, again, going back to the elevating youth voices. So I think part of that is like, are the adults really listening? Are they ready to listen? And the other part of that is, and holding the boundary of with adults, like, and I need you to listen. So in elevating youth voices, when we had our group, we had some adults come in and out, and we very clearly set the boundary. You are more than welcome to listen and watch, but this is for youth and young adults to brainstorm, and for us to create a plan. And they were totally receptive and fine to it. And because, again, it's going back to that intention of like, how are we here in the first place? Why are we here in the first place? And so I think that really helped us to really set the tone of organizations being receptive to not just listening, but the execution of youth and young adult plans and engagement and everything. So it's a little bit, I guess, a little bit of a sad story to empowerment, but I think it is part of the reality as well. And I do think that's changing. I'm hoping, we're crossing our fingers. And I think in our county in Sarasota, Florida, it is happening.
Thank you. And I see Bridget, your hand is up. You go ahead.
Hello, I have a question sent to me as well. Is the program connected to a classroom, or how did they connect with the mentors?
Are you speaking to elevating youth voices, or can you elaborate a little bit more, Bridget?
One moment. Would you like to come off mute and ask your question and/or elaborate? Sorry, I don't have
My question was, how did you all find the adults who will be helping the young people? Like, is this the class? Like, how did you provide training for the adults to, what is the rigor of this program?
Gotcha. Yeah. Um, so I think it's a little bit of a coordinated effort. So it was coordinated through Youth MOVE Suncoast, which is a program, a youth and young adult community-based program under NAMI Sarasota Manatee, which is a local organization in Sarasota, Florida. And so how we kind of trained the youth and young adults in doing this, organizing them, that really was Xina and I coordinating that. So I have a background in program development and creating strategic plans just from, working with a nonprofit organization for quite a while now. So I essentially just kind of like took my ideas and experience of creating systems, and that's something I really love to do. It's just like, ooh, let's create a project, let's create a system here, let's create like a group, and utilizing that to how do we use that to elevate their voices, and then bringing in Xina from the adult perspective of like, what are some things we're missing here, what is the qualitative quantitative data that we're collecting here, to make sure that we're being strategic. Nathan Scott helping to bring in like, what are the intentionality of how we're trying to elevate these voices, and what would be helpful information that the adults are wanting to know and needing and hoping to understand. So that's essentially kind of how we created I think what you're kind of speaking to of like, the kind of classroom, the mentors, like how do we mentors this work group? So I would say it's been, it's a collective effort, I think, between myself, Xina, and Nathan Scott, that all kind of came together to kind of prompt and work and support and structure this work group to what it is today and how we're operating right now at Youth MOVE Suncoast and all the different organizations and local government that we're, I guess, collaborating with at this point. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, and just to add on, aside from like connecting and us being as coordinators, during the actual work group, it's less of like a classroom with like teachers or anything, but it felt more like just like an educated or an intelligent discussion cycle or circle, where we basically were bouncing ideas off of each other of, like what are some of the issues that we see in the communities. And then after working on the actual strategic planning, we were coming back with ideas of how we plan on approaching different visions, what are some of our own experiences in our like living systems, or for example, the schools, the different like public versus private schools that we went to or we are attending, and what are some of the different situations that we've experienced in those different types of environments, and how that really connects to how we see the world and how our opinions were being structured. So I think that was another thing. It was less of like a classroom and more of like just discussing with each other and coming up with ideas and listening to each other's ideas.
Thank you both so much. And I see we have two other questions in the chat. So just some credit that the session is very informative. Love that. Agree. Do you go into their school to share your info, and how often? So I'm getting the sense of like how are you reaching these young people in the community directly? So any thoughts on that? And especially like if you have partnerships with involvement in schools directly too. Curious about that.
Yeah, so something I mentioned earlier, like myself, I'm the co-founder of Lean On Me project. That is at NAMI Sarasota Matini. That is our school-based youth and young adult program. It's focused on elementary and middle schools, and that's where we kind of grow into lead groups and things like that. So it's different from Youth MOVE Suncoast and Elevating Youth Voices, although we do collaborate a lot together on efforts. So we haven't specifically gone into any schools to present this information. Yet, because we did finish up at May. So hopefully our school year in Sarasota County just started. So our goal and our hope is to not only present elevating youth voices and this, not only just this model, but our strategic plan and getting involved with Youth Move Suncoast to execute the strategic plan in schools for like middle school and high school and college age youth, which is our age demographic that we support at Youth Move Suncoast. But also it's an opportunity for schools to also get involved to say like how can they support these efforts. And so that's definitely something that we're working on now that school year is started up and everything's happening there. Zena, I wonder if you have any ideas because I'm graduated. I just actually finished up with my master's, so I'm done. But Zena is a high school student. So Zena, what do you think as a high school student like would like maybe make sense in applying, elevating youth voices and kind of what we're trying to do with this?
Yeah, definitely. So I think for us, because it was like the first cycle that we've ever done it, we didn't go into high schools or like local schools, mainly because at the time I think we were meeting with Nathan Scott, and we were meeting with local youth serving organizations, and our primary goal was to make sure that these youth serving organizations are involved and they are supportive of what we're doing. Which is why I think for our like first cohort that we did, most of the youth who are involved or in participating in the work group were representatives from these youth serving organizations, because we wanted to make sure that they'll be able and they'll be willing to ultimately support our efforts throughout this. And we found that they were indeed very supportive. But I think it was because it was just the first cycle and it was so soon and we didn't really have time. But I think that going forward now, knowing how supportive these youth serving organizations are, now with these new connections that we've made in the community as Youth Move Suncoast, I think it would be awesome to go into local high schools. I know that a lot of students, especially at my school, they see a lot of things that they want to address, they want to change in the communities, but they don't know how to. They don't know which organization to join, or what do I do to get involved in these things. And I don't know which organizations would be supportive or which organizations have the funding to actually support their opinions. So I think that this would be wonderful, not just a way for them to pitch their opinions, but at the same time, be simultaneously connected to so many different organizations locally just through joining one work group and having their perspectives be able to make a difference through so many different organizations. I think as a high school student, if I wasn't involved in this already, I would love to be involved in this.
I love that. And I imagine that you might come up with more learnings and things in that effort to get more involved in in schools as well, because I know that's not always an easy effort, too. So like as y'all continue your journey, and come across new learnings, resources, ways of approaching this work, we'd love to hear how things go and share back with folks anything additional, to what you shared today that comes up for y'all as you continue on. And appreciate you, Nathan, too, for being here and sharing your thoughts in the chat. I hope folks are, taking note of those. And in addition to some extra love, and appreciation for y'all in this space, I think we have one more question, and then we'll move to wrap up. So, is this assistance in California only or other parts of the county or country? So I think a little bit of curiosity into your current reach in this effort, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Youth Move Suncoast is located in Sarasota, Florida, with the NAMI Sarasota Manatee chapter. So we are Florida, specifically local to Sarasota, and we have this amazing opportunity that we're here speaking nationally. So, is there an opportunity to like further this reach? Absolutely. If anyone is ever interested in collaborating and kind of hearing out, like, hey, how can I apply this here in California or within my county or even within my organization? That's something we would love to talk about, and we are more than happy to be a resource for y'all for that, in like planning, structuring, and all these sort of different opportunities to like support how this can happen here. Because a big part of our mission is not just within our community, but like how can we spread this to all the youth and young adults that of course we want to support and serve, in the best of our abilities and everything. So yeah, so our reach is local, and we are happy to collaborate and expand outside of that.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us. Please do, folks, if you are interested in staying connected and reaching out to continue these conversations, maybe seek some consultation, please do reach out to these amazing folks. And for now, we are going to just kind of go into our regular closing out items, for today. So thank you again to our presenters for joining us. Please do reach out and stay, up to date on their efforts. And in terms of our wrapping up for today, thank you again to everyone, in this space for joining us. As a reminder, you will receive a certificate of completion, and a follow-up email after today's session, as well as a recording of this presentation. And your feedback continues to be very important to us. We appreciate all of the feedback that we've received so far. So please do, share your feedback, in the survey that will be sent, in the follow-up email as well. And please continue to stay connected. I will share that, moving forward, we will be kind of revamping our format for this space to be a little bit more around, like structured as a collective discussion, rather than more didactic webinars on trending topics. So we will continue to invite folks from across the field, to facilitate these conversations. Just a note that we'll be welcoming your participation more actively, in this space in future sessions, which I hope is welcome news for folks. Please do, as Bridget shared, stay connected with us across social media, of course, on our website. And again, just thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care for now, and until next time, friends. Thank you all.